Hello, welcome to Korea 4.0. I'm your host, Jung Se-mi. The global community zeroes in on Davos, Switzerland at the end of January every year, and it is for the World Economic Forum, a global event where about 3,000 people from all across the world, from politicians, prominent figures, economists, to journalists attend. What are some pending issues at hand for this year's World Economic Forum? For today's Korea 4.0, we take a closer look at the Davos Forum 2020. The World Economic Forum is celebrating its 50th anniversary this year. It's an event where business, political, academic, and other leaders of society hold meetings to shape global, regional, and industry agendas. This annual event is held in the small Swiss town of Davos, and that's why the WEF is also called the Davos Forum. The WEF was founded in January 1971, and since then, many business leaders, international political leaders, economists, celebrities, and journalists meet to discuss global issues through public and private sessions. At the 2016 Davos Forum, the main theme was understanding the Fourth Industrial Revolution. That was when the jargon Fourth Industrial Revolution was first introduced to the world. Soon, the Fourth Industrial Revolution became a global issue and the next generation Industrial Revolution. The forum states that social development is impossible without economic development and states that economic development cannot continue without social development. Many discussions were held to talk about non-governmental environment issues, the aging society, and international public interest. In addition, talks were held to solve international disputes. The forum also takes the initiative for companies and civilian societies, as well as cooperation between public and private institutions. The Global Competitiveness Report is issued annually by the World Economic Forum, and it ranks countries based on the Global Competitiveness Index. The WEF also issues the Global Risks Report, as well as the Global Gender Gap Report, and works diligently to create a global agenda. The WEF is celebrating its 50th anniversary this year, so let us predict what kind of solutions will be made and what kind of topics will be on the table for discussion. Hello, Professor Kim. Thank you so much for joining us today. Welcome to our show.
It's my pleasure to be here.
Well, a little alpine town in Davos, Switzerland becomes a home to one of the most important global events of the year, and that is none other than the World Economic Forum, also known as Davos Forum 2020. And this forum has sought to broaden its vision to provide a platform for resolving many international conflicts, as well as seeking new visions for the future. So what kind of an effect has Davos Forum had for the global economy as well as the global communities in general up to this date?
Well, one of the largest impact of Davos Forum is that all the leaders all over the world get around in one small city and they're going to talk about the current issues in all over the world. But one of the main advantages for the Davos Forum that all the leaders, they're going to get there, they're going to share the opinions, and they show the directions, which means, well, it's kind of very critical that, well, if we're going to look at what they're going to talk about in the Davos Forum, well, we're going to see, okay, what's going to happen in very near future. In addition, they're going to talk about the issues, which is very serious in all over the world. So basically, well, we're going to hope for the solutions from the Davos Forum in the issues that we're going to talk about in the future.
Mm-hmm. So some of the major, very critical issues that the world needs to tackle will be discussed at this year's Davos Forum. And the Davos Forum this year is in its 50th session in the year 2020. And the main theme for this year's forum is stakeholders for a cohesive and sustainable world. So what does this mean?
Well, if you can think about the term sustainability and the stakeholders, well, it has a very broad concept of the definition. When you talk about the stakeholders, well, remember when the corporation has been developed so quickly in the world, but when you talk about the corporations, we can talk about the employees of the organizations, then we can talk about the raw materials, also we can also talk about the animals or even the environmental issues.
So in a
yes.
much broader sense.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
I mean, as we develop so quickly as in the economic perspective, but we're not going to talk about only the developed countries. We talk about the Africa, or we talk about the Southeast Asians that cannot enjoy those kind of developed economy. Well, in the Davos Forum, of course, all those kind of issues, then what are you going to deal with those kind of people in undeveloped nations? Well, the environmental issues and any other like human right, we're going to see what kind of solutions that they're going to show in Davos Forum.
Now, through this year's forum, the participants are going to give a concrete meaning to stakeholder capitalism. So I know there is a shareholder capitalism and stakeholder capitalism. What are the differences and what is the exact definition of stakeholder capitalism?
Well, if you think about the shareholder capitalism, well, it's kind of, you can think about the stock market. Well, when you're trying to make an investment in stock market, where you're going to make an investment in stock market as an owner, which means you are shareholders of those kind of organizations. Mm-hmm. This organization make money, and then I can be wealthy as an owner. But we're going to think about, as I mentioned before, the employees and all those kind of the protecting employees and any other organizations who can make a business transactions with those kind of organization. It's kind of, well, if we think about the society, we think about as a member of a society where we can talk about the social network. Mm-hmm. But as an organization, when remember they can make a transaction, it's kind of a different entity that they're going to do a lot of different activities. And of course, they're going to hire people, they're going to pay the salaries, and all those different entities work together. We don't narrow down into just only one organization. We can talk about all this linkage, we talk about the network, and this organization, of course, is going to link to all this like Korean economy as well as the world economy.
So the stakeholder capitalism is more, you pay more attention to the interested parties instead of the company centric, I guess. But what is the reason that it is being brought up once again at this year in the year 2020?
Well, they always blame them. Okay, Davos Forum is going to talk about all the issues at the same time. It's kind of very similar for last year and this year. Okay, I believe it's kind of very similar topics, but sometimes that we're going to ignore those kind of issues. For example, it's like the greenhouse effect. Talk about those kind of issues. We're going to protect the world. We talk about always North Pole, South Pole. Well, like one of the famous travel sites, Venezia in Italy, where they have flood basically. Well, eventually, maybe in 10 years or 20 years, because of the level of the sea level is going to go up, maybe they're going to be disappear in very near future. We don't think like they are solved yet. So even though Davos Forum is going to talk about all the issues and they're going to talk about what we're going to do about these issues, but as a member of the world or as a member of the leader, of course, it has not been solved yet. So we're going to go again and we're going to make all the world have, okay, this is the important issue that we have to solve. We know this is the direction that we're going to go for. We have to recognize those kind of issues, and we're going to all get around, and we're going to collaborate, or we're going to cooperate, and we're going to get attention from all over the world again.
If you take a look at South Korea has a formidable shareholder capitalism, I think. And once the Davos Forum ends in a few days, do you think that we'll be able to see more discussions on stakeholder capitalism in South Korea?
Well, if you think about South Korea's economic situation, well, basically our economy is based on the manufacturing industry. Unlike other nations, of course, our nation is not going to enjoy those kind of high economic growth for maybe past 20 years. But like the environmental issues, like the human right or employee right or workers' right or fair trade, all those kind of issues, of course, that we're dealing with in the South Korea, and of course, those kind of issues has to be solved.
Well, at the Davos Forum 2020, prominent figures from all around the world will gather together to discuss some of the pending issues, critical issues that the world needs to tackle. And this year's World Economic Forum, there are 7 key themes that will be discussed. And in order, it goes fairer economies, healthy futures, future of work, tech for good, beyond geopolitics, how to save the planet, and better business. So what are some of the key themes that you'd like to share your insights?
Well, I think all of the research and development has been developed to protect our environment, especially when you talk about all these emerging products, hydrogen car, of course, and in the US, they're going to develop the self-driving car with electric, full. Well, of course, they're going to protect the environment. Gasolines, well, they're going to emit the pollution, of course. We're going to have generate those kind of products. Of course, those kind of new technology is going to be beneficial for all the human beings. It also have the directions for protecting the environment.
So development, sustainability, they have to go hand in hand. And just like you mentioned, the mobility becomes a huge topic for this year. I mean, not only Davos Forum, but the CES 2020, we also covered that quite extensively. And I know that you're also quite passionate about human rights. So the area of healthy futures, what are your thoughts on this?
It's kind of like it's relating to the policy for the Korean government right now when the workers, like what kind of safety they're going to have. Business, technology, human right, or like protecting environment. Well, if you're trying to think about those kind of solutions, of course, the technology can be applied to protect the human's right, of course, especially for when they're going to work in very hazard places. So all those kind of incidents or accidents in the working places, of course, especially when you talk about the manufacturing industry, well, we can protect those kind of workers, and of course, by applying those kind of new technology that, of course, when you talk about the sustainability, stakeholders, capitalism, is in the context of the Davos Forum, I think we can generate very good solutions to gain those kind of advantages for the workers as well as the protecting the environment.
Well, the participants of this year's forum will also talk a lot about environment, especially climate change. So the theme on how to save the planet.
I'm not in the position that those kind of things that we can ask President Trump, yes, or we can ask the President Xi Jinping in China. But I think it's kind of a new theme that we can have. I think it depends on the technology.
Well, especially at this year's forum, we have a very new face, Greta Thunberg from Sweden. I mean, she's also a huge environmentalist. So this public awareness on environmental protection has become a lot larger than ever.
Of course, we can create some business side, but I think a lot of scientists, where they're going to work on those kind of the new technology for research and development. Even though when you talk about the technology, well, let's think about smartphones. Well, when you talk about smartphones, before 20 years ago, well, the people use those smartphones? Yeah, probably not. So the speed of the developing technology has been so
dramatic.
It's kind of amazing speed, like those that we're going to talk about. So I believe, well, of course, that we're going to find a solution, especially in the context of the technology. But I think the time, well, has been shortened very quickly. So even though in the Davos Forum, of course, they trying to provide the directions, but I hope that they also provide some solutions that can be solved.
We just took a look at 7 different key themes that will be discussed at this year's forum, and well, we hope that the participants will suggest a good direction and good strategy in terms of tackling these issues. And the World Economic Forum selects the global risks that need to be solved every year. And what do you think they will be discussing as the global risks for this year?
Of course, the environmental issues are another huge risk, like the international conflict. Like when you talk about the nuclear problems, of course, in North Korea and Iran, and of course that we're gonna deal with those kind of issues too. But economic issues, but it's also gonna have the political issues too, and when you talk about the Davos Forum, about the nuclear problems, remember all very powerful people will attend in the Davos Forum. So it's kind of a key that they can reduce those kind of risk that it might happen in the world.
As you said, geopolitical issues as well as politics, trade, all of these things are so intertwined, and I believe this is the new sort of trend that we are seeing as the time goes by.
What are some global risk factors announced by the WEF? A survey was done on international industrial leaders, and 78.5% of them said economic confrontations and trade disputes will be a representative risk factor of 2020. Such an answer could be due to the US-China trade disputes, which had been ongoing since last year. Following that, 78.4% said domestic political polarization. On the contrary to the answers given by the surveyors, the global shapers are made up of young entrepreneurs and civic activists. They chose climate change for the top 5 risk factors. The heat wave took up 88.8% of this year's dangerous risk factors. 87.9% chose ecocide, and 87% chose pollution that causes negative effects on health as risk factors. The biggest risk factor of 2020 has nothing to do with age. It is abnormal change that is a threat to everyone. Climate change and environmental issues will be the biggest threat to mankind.
The World Economic Forum is best known for its very prestigious, influential global event, and there are many prominent figures that are attending for this year's forum, and especially one person stands out, and that is none other than Donald Trump, the current US president. And you know, he's been in the spotlight for many different reasons, especially with the international conflict with Iran, as well as US president impeachment is going on. And as you mentioned, US-China trade disputes. So why do you think Donald Trump is attending this year's economic forum?
Well, first of all, he's facing the re-election for the presidency in the US this year, of course. I think he's kind of a person that want to get a lot of attentions, but he tried to all these international corporations to make an investment in the US, and they're trying to boost up the US economy. One of the critical issues for the as a president of the US is kind of economy issues. But as you mentioned before, like he's facing the impeachment in issues, of course, that currently, like he has some conflict issues with Iran. He tried to push the role of the U.S. as a kind of a policeman in the world. It's kind of he trying to reclaim the value that U.S. has in international the relationships.
Now, along with Donald Trump, the US president, there are going to be a lot of other prominent figures, and one of them being Park Kyung-sun, the Korean Minister of SMEs and Startups. Could you tell us who will be attending this year's World Economic Forum?
Mr. Chung Ui-sun, he's the CEO for the Hyundai Motors, of course, that he's going to be there, and one of the CEOs, SK the CEO, Choi Tae-won is going to be there too. Well, like the Hyundai Kias, like Hyundai Motors, of course, they trying to convert those kind of the business model into like a hydrogen car or like the self-driving car, those kind of issues that he's going to attend. Also for SK's case is Mr. Choi, he's going to emphasize the role of the social value for SK has been doing, and they're trying to listen to a kind of trend, and they're going to reflect those kind of trend into the product as a service, so that they're gonna meet the needs for the customers, not just for the Korean economy, but for all the customers all over the world. So they can trying to maintain as a theme of the Davos Forum, they can maintain the sustainability as a CEO for the large organizations.
Just like this year's main theme of the World Economic Forum, stakeholders for a cohesive and sustainable world, the fourth industrial revolution is another key issue that will be brought up. And you just mentioned mobility is also another thing that many politicians as well as global leaders will be talking about in this year's forum.
One of the key factors that they're going to talk about is kind of startups. They're depending on the first industrial revolution technology, and they're going to find out what kind of needs that we're going to have as a society, of course. The good example that we always going to talk about is the Silicon Valley. Well, if you talk about the Silicon Valley, well, they can generate a lot of like a new technology, and of course, they can create a lot of new jobs. Of course, that the Korean government, of course, they're trying to catch up, or they're trying to use those kind of the Silicon Valley model as a key benchmarking process. So one of the weaknesses for the startups, of course, they need to find the customers, of course. But when you talk about the Korean economic situation, where it's not easy to find the good customers for the startups. So of course, when you talk about the success for the startups, well, we have to go abroad. So Park Young-sun, of course, they trying to attend the Davos Forum. Of course, she's gonna emphasize how startups doing very well in the Korea economy, and she's gonna help those startups to penetrate into the world market. We hope that they're gonna create a lot of jobs especially for young people in Korea.
Well, I think it's very important that we have to consider the shared growth between the big companies, big conglomerates, as well as startups and small and medium-sized enterprises. But as you see this, this era where we have like Amazon, Apple, all these big IT giants, the monopoly is everywhere. So how should we tackle this kind of situation?
If you look at the current situation for Korea, where you talk about the Naver or Kakao, those kind of organizations where grow as startups, but well, except for the game companies, well, we really cannot see those kind of good examples in Korea economy. But if you look at the U.S. economy, well, as you mentioned, like Amazon, Facebook, and any other IT companies, where they are growing so quickly and they can create a lot of huge economic impact. If you're gonna ignore those kind of startups and small and medium-sized enterprises, so I think it's kind of the strength of the economy get weakened very quickly.
Well, we touched upon many interesting and critical topics during our discussion today. And before I let you go, I want to ask you my last question. What are the implications for this year's 50th World Economic Forum? And also, what do you think South Korea should do in terms of for the common wealth, common prosperity, and overall development of the world?
They are leaders. They are very strong leaders for the strong nations. Well, if you think about Korea, if you think about all of the world, I hope that, well, all the entities, especially if you think about the organizations or corporations, you are large and multinational corporations, that you need to take care of the small and medium-sized enterprises. Well, when you talk about the Davos Forum, for the economy-wise, or for the any other policy that they're going to talk about, I hope that they're going to present some solutions that all these entities with a strong and wealthy powers, they can take care of those kind of people, or poor people and the people who really don't have wealth as well as those kind of power, so that they can have, or they can enjoy, or they can improve their quality of life all over the world. So that's kind of my hope, and every year that I'm very interested in looking at the topics and the themes for the Davos Forum. But one wish that I, of course, they look at when you think about, or when you hear, when you talk about the Davos Forum's topics.
Well, it was surely very interesting to touch upon all these different topics and also hear your insights today. So thank you very much for taking your precious time to be with us today. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
The World Economic Forum is held until January 24th. And we will continue to take a closer look at this forum until the end and see what kind of measures the global leaders should take for the betterment of the global economy. Now that brings us to the end of this week's edition of Korea 4.0. We'll be back with another informative economic discussion next week. Thanks for watching.